let me show you a cake that instantly makes people smile. This is my Funfetti Bundt Cake. Soft, buttery, full of sprinkles, and impossible not to feel happy about. It looks impressive, but it's actually very approachable, which is my favorite kind of recipe. I make this for birthdays, celebrations, or just when I want something cheerful in the kitchen. So, grab a coffee and hang out with me. I'll show you how I turn a simple Bundt cake into something really special. I start by preheating the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, because with Bundt cakes, having the oven ready is half the battle. Bundt cakes like consistency, and I like knowing the oven isn't going to surprise me later. Then I grab a large bowl and mix together the dry ingredients: flour, baking powder, and salt. I always whisk these together first. It's not glamorous, but it matters. This step helps everything bake evenly and saves you from weird pockets of flour or salt hiding in the cake. It's one of those quiet steps that doesn't feel important in the moment, but your future self slicing the cake will be very thankful you did it. In a separate bowl, I whisk together the eggs and vanilla extract. Vanilla might seem small, but it does a lot of quiet work. It rounds out the flavor and keeps everything tasting warm and balanced instead of overly eggy. Then comes the sour cream, which is one of my favorite ingredients in cakes like this. Sour cream adds moisture and richness, but also a slight tang that keeps the cake from tipping into overly sweet territory. In a large bowl, I beat the room temperature butter and sugar together using a mixer. And when I say room temperature, I really mean it. Cold butter and warm butter behave very differently. And this is not the moment to fight physics. I let the mixer run until the mixture turns light, fluffy, and noticeably paler in color. This part takes a few minutes, and I don't rush it. Creaming butter and sugar properly adds air to the batter, which is what gives this cake that soft, tender crumb. If you've ever made a cake that tasted fine but felt a little dense, this step is usually the reason. So I let it do its thing while I sip my coffee and pretend I'm being very productive. I add the egg mixture to the butter and sugar half at a time, mixing gently between each addition. I really take my time here and let everything fully come together before adding more. This slower pace helps the batter stay smooth, creamy, and cohesive instead of breaking or looking grainy. Personal tip from me: if your eggs are a little cooler than the butter, this step matters even more. Adding them gradually helps the temperature adjust slowly, which keeps the batter stable. Dumping everything in at once can shock the mixture. And that's when you end up with a curdled, separated situation halfway through baking. And that's always frustrating. If it ever looks slightly uneven, don't panic. Just keep mixing gently and give it a moment. Most of the time it comes right back together. Baking really rewards patience here. Next, I add the dry ingredients into the wet ingredients 1/3 at a time, mixing between each addition. I really take my time here and let each addition fully blend in before adding more. This keeps the batter smooth and light, and it helps prevent overmixing, which is one of the easiest ways to end up with a dense cake. Personal tip from me: if the batter starts looking thick or heavy, I pause for a second and scrape down the bowl. I've learned that sometimes the ingredients just need a moment to catch up. A quick scrape and gentle mix usually brings everything right back together. Another small tip here: once the last bit of flour goes in, I'm extra gentle. Overmixing at this stage can undo all the work you did earlier, so I stop as soon as everything looks incorporated. And just a quick note before we move on: all the tools I'm using and the full list of ingredients are linked in the description below, along with the complete blog post for this recipe if you want to follow along step by step. Now this is where I need to pause and be very honest with you. Baker to baker. What you're supposed to do, and what I absolutely recommend, is tossing the rainbow sprinkles with 1 tablespoon of all-purpose flour before adding them to the batter. This little flour coat helps the sprinkles stay suspended instead of diving straight to the bottom like they're late for an appointment. And yes, I forgot to do that here. I will absolutely pay for it later, and you'll see exactly what I mean in the video. Learn from me, please. In this particular bake, I forgot. It happens. So don't follow me exactly here. Do the smart thing and coat your sprinkles with flour first. Then gently fold the floured sprinkles into the batter using a spatula. This is a gentle, respectful fold. No aggressive mixing. You want the sprinkles evenly distributed, not bleeding their colors into the batter. Why this matters? Flour gives the sprinkles just enough grip to stay suspended in the batter instead of collecting at the bottom. It's a small step, but it makes a noticeable difference in how evenly those pops of color show up in every slice. Even if you forget like I did, the cake will still taste great. But if you remember this step, your funfetti will look even better. Prepping the bundt pan. This step is very important, and I say that as someone who has learned this lesson the hard way more than once. I coat my bundt pan thoroughly with vegetable shortening, making sure to get into every curve, ridge, and decorative detail. I don't rush this. I actually use my fingers here because I can really feel that I've covered everything. Bundt cakes are beautiful, but they are also clingy, and they will absolutely test your patience if you give them even one tiny, ungreased spot. Then I sprinkle flour over the pan and slowly roll it around so every surface is coated. I don't shake off the excess. That extra flour is insurance, and I've learned not to argue with insurance, especially with a cake that took this much effort to make. Personal tip from me, if your bundt pan has very deep or sharp details, take an extra 30 seconds here. Those are the spots where cakes like to stick, and those are usually the spots that ruin your mood if you skip them. If you've ever flipped a bundt cake and held your breath, tapped the pan, whispered encouragement, and briefly questioned your life choices, you already understand exactly why this step matters. We have all been there. I pour the batter evenly into the prepared bundt pan and gently smooth the top. I also give the pan a couple of light taps on the counter, not aggressively, just enough to help release any large air bubbles hiding inside. Into the oven, it goes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, 175 degrees Celsius for 50 to 65 minutes. I start checking around the 50-minute mark because every oven behaves a little differently, and bundt cakes are thick, so timing really matters here. When a toothpick inserted into the center comes out clean, or with just a few moist crumbs, it's ready. Wet batter means it needs more time. No negotiation. I take store-bought buttercream frosting and beat it with a hand mixer for a couple of minutes until it's light and fluffy. this step really does make a big difference. Straight from the can frosting works just fine, but whipping it adds air, makes it smoother, and gives it that soft, creamy texture that's much easier and more enjoyable to pipe. Personal tip from me: if the frosting feels a little stiff, you can let it sit at room temperature for a few minutes before mixing. It loosens up beautifully and saves you from fighting with the mixer. Then I add a little pink food coloring, just a bit at a time, mixing in between until the color looks soft and cheerful, not neon. I always remind myself that you can add more, but you can't take it out. So slow and steady is the way to go here. Once the color looks right, I transfer about 1/3 of the frosting into a piping bag. I like starting with just part of the frosting, so it's easier to control, and I don't overfill the bag. That usually ends in frosting everywhere except where you want it. Keeping the bag about half full makes piping smoother, cleaner, and a lot less stressful. Once it's out of the oven, I let the cake cool in the pan for about 10 minutes. This window is important. Too soon, and it can fall apart. Too long, and it can stick. 10 minutes is the sweet spot I always come back to. Now, this is also where I need to confess something. Because baking is never just about perfection, it's also about real life. Earlier, when I forgot to coat the sprinkles with flour, I unknowingly signed myself up for a little bundt cake drama. You'll actually see it happen in the video. The cake doesn't release as cleanly as I hoped. And yes, it sticks. A little. Okay, more than a little. This kind of thing can happen when sprinkles aren't coated and when a bundt pan isn't greased generously enough. Especially with all those beautiful dramatic ridges. Between skipping that sprinkle step and the pan doing what bundt pans sometimes love to do, I fully earned this moment. How did I feel? Slightly defeated? Slightly annoyed? And then immediately motivated. Because what did I do next? I baked another entire bundt cake just for this photo shoot. Fresh batter, fresh pan, fresh lesson learned. So please, learn from me. Coat your sprinkles, grease your pan, can Like you mean it, you swear like you mean it, and save yourself the emotional roller coaster and the bonus cake bake. I already paid the price here. You don't have to. After those 10 minutes, once the cake has rested in the bundt pan and finished setting, I carefully turn it out onto a wire rack. I like using a wire rack because it lets air circulate all the way around the cake, which helps it cool evenly and prevents condensation from making the bottom soggy. Once it's out, I loosely cover it with a kitchen towel and let it cool for another 30 to 40 minutes. This protects the surface while still letting heat escape. Personal tip, don't rush this part. I know it's tempting to move on, but if the cake is still warm when you start filling or decorating, it can crack, crumble, or melt your frosting. And that's just unnecessary stress. Also, lately I've been giving my bundt cakes a little extra love by brushing or soaking them with a simple cake syrup once they're fully cooled. It makes the cake super, super moist, and it's one of those quiet bakery tricks that makes a big difference. You can keep it classic with vanilla or add flavor, citrus, almond, even a little vanilla extract, depending on the vibe you want. Fully cooled cake equals cleaner cuts, smoother decorating, and a much calmer baker. Once the cake is completely cool, and yes, I mean completely cool, not I'm impatient and hopeful cool, I carefully flip it upside down onto a cutting board. This always feels like a tiny leap of faith, but we've come this far together. Then I grab an apple corer and cut 6 evenly spaced holes around the cake. I love using this tool because it's fast, clean, and doesn't rip the cake apart like a knife sometimes can. It creates perfect little tunnels just waiting to be filled. And honestly, this is where the cake starts getting sneaky in the best way. This is one of my absolute favorite moments in the whole process. From the outside, it still looks like a classic bundt cake. No one suspects a thing. And that moment when someone cuts into it and discovers frosting inside, that reaction never gets old for me. I snip the tip off the piping bag and pipe frosting into each hole, filling them generously. Because if we're doing this, we're doing it properly. Then I gently place the cake pieces back on top to close everything up, like nothing ever happened. It's a small extra step, but it turns every slice into a little surprise party hidden inside the cake. And honestly, that tiny bit of drama is exactly why I love baking like this. carefully flip the cake onto a serving plate or cake stand. And this is yet another quiet, slightly dramatic moment of trust between me and the cake. I always pause for half a second here, just to make sure we're both emotionally ready. Then I spoon the remaining buttercream over the top and gently spread it, letting it fall naturally into the curves of the bundt shape. I don't chase perfection here. In fact, I've learned that slightly uneven frosting makes the cake look more homemade, more inviting, and way less intimidating. Like it's saying, go ahead, cut a slice. Personal tip from me, I actually use a small silicone spatula for this part. It gives me just enough control to gently spread the icing without scraping or tearing the surface of the cake. Silicone is soft, flexible, and perfect for following all those Bundt curves. Because the cake already has enough drama built in, the frosting can relax a little. Finally, I shower the top with confetti sprinkles. And when I say shower, I mean generously. This is absolutely not the time to be restrained or practical. If you think you've added enough sprinkles, add a few more. Funfetti energy demands enthusiasm, joy, and a complete lack of self-control. This Funfetti Bundt Cake is pure celebration in cake form. It's soft, colorful, nostalgic, and surprisingly simple to make, even though it looks like it came straight from a bakery display case. I love this cake because it brings instant joy to the table. It feels lighthearted and celebratory, and sometimes that's exactly what you need, even on an ordinary day. It's the kind of dessert that makes people smile before they even take a bite. And that's honestly one of my favorite things about baking. If you're making this for a birthday, a holiday, or just because you want something happy in your kitchen, this cake never disappoints. Thanks so much for baking along with me. I'll see you in the next video, probably with more sprinkles and definitely with more cake.